how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the most recent reboot of The Equalizer, currently starring Queen Latifah in the title role, and it's currently airing on CBS as we speak. Now, let's get into The Equalizer. I am a huge fan of The Equalizer. Going to do a quick history lesson here. The Equalizer was created by Michael Sloan, and it premiered on CBS in the mid-1980s. So it ran from 1985 to 1989, starring veteran British actor Edward Woodward in the title role as Robert McCall. What made this show interesting was the premise that he was an ex-CIA operative who gave that life up after one tragic event. He relocates to New York to reestablish a relationship with his teenage son. And he doesn't look like your 80s action star. He's an older gentleman, wears a three-piece suit, drives a fancy Jaguar, lives in a posh apartment, but he's got a drive to help out the everyday person. So what he does is he runs an ad in the New York Times. If the odds are against you, you can hire the Equalizer. Doesn't take any money. He just does this because he wants to give back. And the show was very interesting, very moody, had some really good guest stars. And the music background was from Stuart Copeland, who was a musician with the 1980s band The Police. And it made for a very moody background, similar to Miami Vice in the 1980s when Jan Hammer provided that soundtrack. So what made this character interesting was, again, he didn't look like your action star, and he blended in. He was very unassuming. He also didn't take credit for what he did or who he saved or whatever. He kind of blended in. Made this show quite successful. I loved it. I watched every episode. It ran from 85 to 89. And after 1989, it was still a hit show, but it went off air. So over the years, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if they rebooted it? Sure enough, Antoine Fuqua, very successful director who directed Training Day, starring Denzel Washington, decided he was going to reboot The Equalizer in films. So Denzel Washington now would be the title character, Robert McCall. And what I loved about the movie series is they did what's called a fresh reboot. So other than the fact they used the character Robert McCall, and that he's going to help people against the odds, it was a totally different character of Robert McCall. He no longer had a teenage son. He wasn't divorced. In fact, his wife had passed away, and he was quite torn up about that. You really see the struggle there. He also suffered from OCD and PTSD, lived in a very modest apartment, worked at the local Home Mart, didn't drive a Jaguar, took the transit bus. So it's a fresh reboot. And you really saw the drive with this character as well on why he wanted to help out the everyday person. There was more of a backstory, an origin story, and it made sense. Like, it was just one of the best movies ever. Matter of fact, I've reviewed that Equalizer movie on my page. Check it out. So when they advised they were going to be doing another reboot of The Equalizer, I was quite excited for TV. My first concern was, I hope it doesn't go to the networks, because the networks suck. I'm just going to say right now, when I say networks, I'm talking about ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. They suck for rebooting good shows or good movies, etc., etc. Give you an example. They tried to reboot Magnum PI recently, and it was horrible, downright horrible. I don't know why it's even still on the air. I'll do that in another review. And then Lethal Weapon, they brought that to Fox. It was horrible, 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 horrible. So when I heard this was going to CBS, I was like, oh, here we go again. Because the problem with networks is they have to go by a certain book. They have a rule book they have to go by. And they're very procedural, and they're very episodic. And what I mean by episodic is they'll wrap everything up in an hour, they'll shove everything into an hour. Actually, I should say 45 minutes minus commercials. And then by the next episode, it's like they've forgotten about that episode altogether. Now, that was kind of the scheme or theory they used in the 1980s and 70s that made those shows successful. But in this day and age, you now have Netflix, you now have Amazon, Cinemax, HBO, etc., that have high-quality shows that aren't episodic, that are very good, shot very well, great screenplays, and great action. So the bar is already set for that when they're bringing the Equalizer. As well as there's an expectation of the Equalizer to kind of continue the same formula in a way where they're unassuming, they blend in, there's a real drive to do the right thing, and it's somewhat realistic. Like in the Equalizer movie, he had 2 apartments. So if the bad guys figured out who he was, he could rotate to that other apartment. He also didn't have anybody really in jeopardy in that movie. Didn't have any family members left or anything like that. He also had faked his own death from the CIA so they wouldn't be looking for him. So there's a lot of things that made sense in that movie. In this TV series, let me dive right into this. Queen Latifah now is the first female version of the Equalizer. And again, I'm still excited for this. I'm thinking, okay, this could be a fresh reboot. Really thrilled to see this show. It debuted, the pilot episode, right after this year's Super Bowl on CBS. I PVR'd it, and I watched the first episode. So let me get into the premise of this current version of the Equalizer. So Queen Latifah portrays Robyn McCall, who is a former operative of the CIA, who's recently left the CIA, relocated back to New York, where her teenage daughter lives, who also lives with Robyn McCall's aunt. So the aunt's been taking care of Robyn McCall's daughter while she's been off on missions overseas, etc. Now, the daughter comes off as a very intelligent teenage girl, but for whatever reason, she just strictly believes that her mom worked for a big Fortune 500 company overseas, has no idea about her training, military, CIA, etc. So that was a little hard to believe, but we'll get past that. So that's the one character. When Robyn McCall comes back to New York, there's real no explanation or drive to why she wants to become the Equalizer, essentially, why she wants to go help people, which I thought they missed. They missed the mark there big time. There's no explanation of why she wants to go and help these people. But I think what really hurts this show is all the side characters. The thing about the Equalizer that made it interesting in the 80s is he did have one friend, one associate by the name of Mickey, and who helped him out on missions, etc. So that made sense. In the movie series is actually quite different. He didn't have anybody other than his former handler who knew he was alive to lean on for assistance throughout the series as well, the film series, that is. In this series, she's got multiple characters she leans on. I'm going to get into them because, again, I don't think they help the show out. As a matter of fact, I think they hurt the show, and I'll tell you why. So her first friend is Melody, and Melody is a former special ops sniper. Worked with her in the special forces, I guess. She's in New York as well. She's left the agency behind herself, and she has this posh, expensive nightclub. Not sure where she got all the money for it, but anyways, she has this nightclub that she has. Now, the problem with this character is when you look at her, she looks like she just graduated high school last week. She's not very convincing that she spent any time in the military or was a master sniper by any means. She's married to a fellow by the name of Harry, portrayed by a really good actor, Adam Goldberg, who starred in Saving Private Ryan and a few other good films. Harry is a master computer hacker. This guy's got multiple monitors over the wall, apparently in an office adjoining to his wife's nightclub. Now, he can track down anybody. He can hack into any system. He can pretty much do everything. The problem with this, and again, hurting the idea of a fresh reboot, is it seems to be a carbon copy of a very successful previous series called Person of Interest, which is one of my favorite TV series in the past. And it seems like a cheap reboot of that, copying that premise and putting it in this show. And that doesn't really follow who the Equalizer is. The Equalizer is a lone wolf. The Equalizer operates on his own initiative, or her own initiative in this case, and doesn't need all this support. But in any event, he provides the support for this endeavor. Then we get into her handler, William Bishop, portrayed by Chris Noth. Now, I think he does a pretty good job for what he's given in this show. Chris Noth is an established actor in previous series Law and Order, and he does portray the handler to a certain degree. I'll give it that. I don't have a problem with his character. Let's get into the next supporting character. And again, there's so many supporting characters. Equalizer probably shouldn't be, but there is. So we have a detective by the name of Dante Marcus. And he's your typical network police detective, and I'll get into why. In the networks, they want to portray police detectives as working 24/7 and going to every single crime there is. And this is no different. Everything the Equalizer deals with, he just happens to show up as a detective. You kind of wonder if he's got a off-duty life or anything like that. And what about his other cases he's working as a detective? How does he have all this extra time? But anyways, we'll put that aside. So they start to build this sub-story where he's trying to figure out who the mysterious Equalizer is. Now, that could have alone been interesting for the story arc. So for the first 3 episodes, I thought, well, this is pretty good. But then all of a sudden, I can't remember if it was episode 2 or 3, where she basically shows up on the other side of a chain link fence and is communicating with him and basically says, hey, look at me, I'm the Equalizer. So there goes that subplot down the toilet, essentially. That made absolutely no sense. The other thing with this Equalizer I don't like is all the one-liners, and there's a real tacky one where Robyn McCall basically says to a victim she's helping out, "I'm the one you call when you can't call 911." There is no way the Equalizer would say that, even in a fresh reboot. It's just so tacky. It was obviously made to advertise the show on promo ads and commercials, because I saw that one-liner in a promo ad for the show, and then I saw it in the episode, and I said, "This is ridiculous." Um, it just doesn't feel like the Equalizer. Now, if this was a whole different show where Robyn McCall is this person that came back to New York to help people, um, and wasn't called the Equalizer, it may work because it's a different show. I would say it kind of is trying to resemble Equalizer, but in any event, this is not a fresh reboot of the Equalizer. It's not who the Equalizer is. So I'm very disappointed, unfortunately, in this show. There's not a lot of pros. The action scenes, you've seen them all before. There doesn't seem to be any sense of jeopardy like in the TV series, previous TV series and the movies, where the bad guys have stepped up their game. But the one other huge problem I have with this show is the fact that she lives out in the open with her daughter and her aunt. Any of these bad guys she's going up against, and these are bad dudes, don't get me wrong, could easily figure out where she lives. There's no sense of safety for her own family when she's going up doing the missions. And that also leads to the fact there's no desire. You don't see the reason why she's doing this, like in the TV series and the movies. There's no build up or backstory to it. It just doesn't do well. It's one of those episodic TV series similar to Magnum PI and Lethal Weapon that just clearly doesn't work. Apparently they're looking at doing a season 2 for this. That's fine, I guess. If you enjoy this TV series and you've never seen the Equalizer 80 series or even the 2 Denzel Washington movies, continue with it. I would recommend you stick with it, and if you enjoy it, enjoy it. That's, again, it's my opinion. But if you're a diehard fan of the Equalizer like I am, I think you're going to be severely disappointed in this reboot series. I just want to finish off by saying that Queen Latifah is a fabulous actress. She really is. I do like her work. And I like a lot of these actors' works and actresses' work that's in this series. But I just think it's not written well. It's not rebooted well, and I don't even know if Michael Sloan has any involvement in this current series. I would hazard to say probably not, because it doesn't follow the heart and soul of who the Equalizer truly is. The lone wolf, the unassuming person, the person that saves people, rescues people, but stays in the background. That's not who this character is whatsoever. Again, I've only seen 3 episodes. I have zero desire to see any more. Extremely disappointed. I'm hoping that if the show ends, they'll reboot it some other way down the road, and they'll put it on a proper network where it deserves to be, like HBO or Netflix. Out of a 1 to 10, I sadly give this series a 3. I went into it high hopes, really wanting to like this series, was very excited to see this series, and unfortunately, I just don't like it. It's not a very good series. I wish Queen Latifah well. I hope that if the series ends, she goes on to bigger and better things. I'm sure she will. But this series is just not up to the caliber of my expectations for what the Equalizer should be. So let me know what your comments are below. If you like the Equalizer, fair enough. It's not, it's not for everybody. That's my personal opinion. But like, subscribe my channel, leave some comments. Take care.